Strategy. What exactly is strategy? And how does it differ from planning? That's what we're going to go through today. Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to Musicom Academy. Today it's all about strategy, and I'm going to go through that. I'm going to give you two real-life radio strategies that I had to kind of pull off, and they work great. Actually, the first one better than I actually thought, because it was a total wild card as to where that one's going to go. But just out of curiosity alone, I thought, you know what, it's worth the gamble. I'm going to take the shot and see what happens one way or the other. So first off, before we get into those, and I'm just want to play you something, I think it's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes long, if at that. It's from a professor at the University of Toronto who also does the Harvard thing. He works there also. And it's a great, short explanation of the difference between strategy and planning.
This thing called planning has been around for a long, long time. More recently, has been a discipline called strategy. People have put those two things together to call something strategic planning. Unfortunately, those things are not the same. What most strategic planning is in the world of business has nothing to do with strategy. It's got the word, but it's not. It's a set of activities that the company says it's going to do. We're going to improve customer experience. We're going to open this new plant. We're going to start a new talent development program, a whole list of them. But the results of all of those are not going to make the company happy because they didn't have a strategy. So what's a strategy? A strategy is an integrative set of choices that positions you on a playing field of your choice in a way that you win. So there's a theory. Strategy has a theory. Here's why we should be on this playing field, not this other one. And here's how, on that playing field, we're going to be better than anybody else at serving the customers on that playing field. Plans typically have to do with the resources you're going to spend. We're going to build a plant. We're going to hire some people. Those are all things that are on the who controls your costs. Who's the customer of your costs? The answer is you are. Strategy specifies an outcome, a competitive outcome that you wish to achieve, which involves customers wanting your product or service enough that they will buy enough of it to make the profitability that you'd like to make. You don't control them. They decide, not you. That means here's what we believe will happen. We can't guarantee it. The tricky thing about planning is that while you're planning, chances are at least one competitor is figuring out how to win.
Okay, so now that we have a pretty good idea of what strategy is versus planning, let me go into two strategies. One is about CanCon, Canadian Content Music, and the other is literally about setting up a brand new radio station in a market and deciding where to place the radio station and what to do with that radio station and how to program it and all that sort of stuff. First up is CanCon. Now, I got to explain CanCon. I'm going to try to do as fast as I can for those of you who don't understand what it is. If you're in Canada, you'll know what it is. Essentially, it's if you're a radio station and you're going to be playing music, 1/3 of it has to be Canadian music. That was the initial rule. It started out as 30%, okay, which is essentially 1 out of every 3 songs. And you can't bury the songs. You can't put them all at night. It's pretty much got to be spread evenly throughout the day. So that's basically it. Okay, no problem. Except that there is a problem with it. Not now. It was a good idea, but the implementation just didn't work out all that well. It's very much like electric vehicles right now. The idea is sound. I would love to have an electric vehicle. There's no charging stations right here because I live in a condo. And so therefore, if I have one, I have no way of charging it. Not all that good. But there are problems with, electric vehicles in comparison to gas vehicles, and that, for one, an easy one is they don't go as far. You got to keep charging them. You can only go 200-300 miles. Now they're getting it out to maybe 400 miles. Or on a tank of gas, depending on where you are, you can go 600 miles or, that kind of thing. and hard to find charging stations. Gas stations are everywhere. So there are problems. For the Canadian music industry, they put a percentage that you had to do, but the infrastructure wasn't there to actually fit it. It's the same with the electric vehicles. I think California right now is 2035, I think they're saying, where there's no more gas vehicles going to be sold in California. Well, you can go like, I don't know if you're going to make that, because that's only, 13 years from now, and you're doing brownouts across the state at the moment. Same thing in Texas. They're doing brownouts, and in a bunch of other places throughout the U.S. So if you're doing brownouts right now, and your infrastructure can't actually handle it, how are you going to add a ton of cars on? It just seems like it's a little too early. Again, good idea, but the implementation is like way too fast. That rule started in 1970, okay? And I would say that the Canadian music industry hit full stride. I mean, it's as good as any music industry anywhere in any country, anywhere in the world. Sort of hit stride somewhere around 2009, 10. That's where, Justin Bieber kicked in, Drake kicked in, Carly Rae Jepsen, The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes. They're all kind of in that 2008, 9 to 2012 range. And from that point on, golden, okay, for the last 10 years. But what I'm going to tell you about was going on in the 90s. So it's, I don't know, what is that, 15, 20 years ahead of it kicking in, okay, when there's still a problem. Here's the situation. The Canadian content rule was about to be changed from 30%. They were going to kick it up even higher to 35%. Now, we all knew in the industry that there wasn't enough for 30%. There just wasn't enough bands. You had enough bands to play and enough acts to play on the air. But if you took the majority of them, not all, some were pretty good, but if you took the majority and you tried to put it up against, Aerosmith or the Beatles or Billy Joel, it was just like, man, there was a pretty wide disparity in quality there because the industry just hadn't caught up. So essentially, you're playing songs that aren't hits, will never be hits, and they're inferior. Probably when they were looking for 30%, I don't know, probably 12% would have been, would have worked out okay. Anyway, doesn't really matter. The situation was it was going from 30 to 35%. Now, what that meant was one more song per hour. I'm going like, wow. I was managing a radio station in Calgary at that time. It was a rock station. And so we had to talk with the PD, Bob Harris. And I said, Bob, we're going to have a problem here because every radio station in the entire country is going to have to start going from roughly 4 Canadian songs per hour, of which for sure 3 of them, weren't all that good. 1 was good, 3 was, maybe 1 was good, 1 was kind of okay, and the other 2, were something less than that. We're going to have to go to 5 of those, and nothing got better, immediately. It wasn't just like, overnight, it got better. So you go like, oh my God, what do you do here? So we kicked it around, and I came up with that, I was doing the math on it because I like to work things in reverse. And well, how do we avoid doing that extra 5th one per hour? What can we possibly do? And the only way the math came out was, what if we just sacrificed an hour each day and just go full on 100% CanCon? Every single song in a particular hour was going to be Canadian content. 13 songs, 14 songs, whatever it was, that hour, that's what we would play. So I look through the ratings and you go, okay, our weakest 2 hours of the day, and it's a strong radio station at the time. I think we were running number 2, number 1 in the market. So, you're playing with fire here. But I looked and go, okay, our weakest hour is 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So started to elect to do this. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it's 1 o'clock, all CanCon. Tuesday, Thursday, it's the 2 o'clock hour, all CanCon, okay? That's the strategy. Had no idea how it's going to turn out. Didn't want to tell anybody because if it turned out well and the ratings didn't drop, I kind of expected a little bit of a drop, maybe not that much, because we really worked on hiding the hour, like we were trying to pump it with a lot of good songs, and super careful how they were played and all that sort of stuff. But we never mentioned that it's all CanCon on the air. Just sort of ignored the whole thing, treated it like it was a regular hour to the public. Again, because we didn't want somebody going to the CRTC and saying, they just did 100%, we could raise it beyond 35, which would have been like, okay, why don't you just kill every radio station in the country, and blow the listeners off to the internet completely, because the internet was sort of coming into its own then. Anyway, so we did that, and waiting for the first rating, no idea what it's going to do. Is it didn't ever expect it to go up, which it didn't. Definitely expected it to go down. Not sure if it's going to be a little bit down or it's going to be a train wreck, but that was the gamble. And when I say gamble, that's strategy. Strategy is gambling on something of logic. Strategy is gambling on something of common sense or gut, or looking at a bunch of data and things and past stuff that you've seen and going, I think, big one, I think this will work, but I'm not sure. That's strategy. So what was the outcome? Nothing changed. The 1 o'clock hour, 2 o'clock hours looked identical to the way they were. It's like, didn't miss a beat. The station just kept running, I don't know, I'll make this up. Like if it was a 10 share going in, it was a 10 share coming out. Nothing changed. Shocking, actually, but it was cool. And, and we just kept doing it. Meanwhile, every other radio station added in that fifth song and wrecked all of their hours, and we actually climbed in the ratings because of it, because we just sounded better, and probably nobody could figure out why. It's because we were just playing one less weak song in all the other hours. Strategy number 2 was a lot more complicated and a lot more head games with the audience. We were changing the format of an AC radio station that was not doing well, and we wanted to go to something else because we tried it. I came in as a new PD. I tried it one book as an AC radio station. It became really clear to me, it's like, okay, we're never going to catch the main ones. This is like a losing battle. We need to flip and do something else. What else can we do? So this is what we had out there. At the moment in the market, there was a rock radio station that had really good numbers, but it was sort of not really classic rock very much. It was mostly rock. It's kind of, somewhere between an active rock and a classic rock station. I want to say probably from memory here, maybe it was like 60 rock, 40 classic rock, somewhere like that. There was an alternative radio station, 3 mainstream AC radio stations, of which one of them was super strong, and that was the one that we couldn't beat and never would probably ever beat, so we just got out of that game completely. And then there was another really strong radio station, which was a hot AC radio station that at times leaned a little bit alternative, although that's sort of the ear at that time of the market itself. It had a little bit of an alternative bent. That was on FM. On AM, there was a full-blown CHR, which had been a super strong CHR, and it was still there, but it was on AM. And there were 2 oldie stations on AM. Now, from past history, which I knew, okay, a couple things just talking about oldies. Number one, I knew from being in my time in Detroit and watching research groups, I knew that if you had an AM music station, you were dead. So that immediately ruled out the 2 AM oldie stations. I could care less that they're there, okay? And also on oldies, from being in Detroit and being in Cincinnati and being a student of watching the game as it progresses, I knew that if you put on a brand new gold station on the air for the very first time, audience comes to you like a vacuum cleaner. You're just hoovering up people because they just sound good. And also from all my time in the United States programming there and seeing things and watching and being a student of the game, I'm looking at the market and going, what's missing here? What's missing on FM, because AM didn't really count? There was no classic rock station. There was no oldie stations that I mentioned or classic hits. There was no CHR on FM. There was no urban station on FM. There was no urban AC on FM. And there was no country station on FM. There was one, a little one kind of out in the suburbs on AM, which again didn't matter. That's the atmosphere, and you go like, wow, okay. Now, what else is going on here? Again, adding all these pieces, which I want you to do as you're looking through your competitors and you're looking at your own radio station in the market, you need to weigh a little bit of everything. In talking to people, I would get this, oh, AM top 40, they play jingles, they talk over the music, I don't like the music that they play. Top 40 had a stigma, but it really was a stigma for the AM radio station because it's on AM and it doesn't sound right. It's muddy compared to FM and all that other stuff. At the same time, what I also noticed was that was mainly sort of younger people under the age of maybe 25, 26, 27. When you started to get up a little bit farther than that, there was a lot of people who were older, they're 35, 36, maybe even higher than that. They grew up on top 40 and liked top 40, but didn't really like the top 40 station that was there on AM. Never said they would want one on FM, but you could tell that they had fondness for it and they liked the music. So that turned into a research study because the thought was, well, what if I do this? What if we build a CHR on FM and go down the path of, yes, we're going to have jingles because I want it to be like a CHR. I want people to think of it as a CHR. We're going to talk over the music. We're going to have jocks with some pretty good energy and they're doing stuff. And we're going to have ideas in production that sound that way. But at the time, the Canadian rules didn't allow certain things. You could only play a hit song, a new hit song 21 times in a week, which is, divide 21 by 7, it's 3 times. If you divide that into a typical day, 6 a.m. to midnight, it's roughly every 5 hours. It's like, that's today's AC rotations of their current songs every 5 hours. Okay, so that's not actually that bad. Again, knowing that from doing ACs in the US, and I've already done that stuff, I knew okay, that's not going to be a problem. I can give the illusion of being a CHR. Now, looking back at the oldies radio stations that didn't exist on FM and all the ones that I had seen, it's like there's a huge hole here for playing gold. So ended up building, the strategy was to build a CHR feeling radio station in every possible sense of it. I mean, I'm doing head games big time with the audience that this is a CHR and every possible thing I can do, except that the rotations are that of an AC radio station and the gold is that of, actually pretty much like an AC station right now, actually, with that much gold, really. A little bit less than what a typical AC would do right now, because we were probably doing 70-30, 70% gold, 30% current. That's kind of probably the way it was. But again, making believe it's a CHR. Boom, come out of the gate flying, big numbers, which was a really nice surprise because going in, we had no idea. You don't really know if you're going to just kind of go up a little bit, are you going to really come out booming, or what's going to happen, because it's a strategy. Now, we had a lot of research, like I mentioned. We researched all the music, made sure all the gold, that we're playing in the current music was well liked. Definitely did that. And we did something very, very unique at the time, because my thought was, I want to go for people who are older, let's just say 35-year-olds, and that grew up on top 40, liked top 40, but still thought of themselves as younger. So we asked some questions, and we had a couple of really weird questions, because we actually went to a research company that did not do radio. They had never done radio. What they did was political polling. It wasn't the usual radio questions, who plays the best music, and what jock do you like on the air the most, and all that stuff. Could care less. I wanted to know how they actually felt about top 40 and their own selves. So I remember one of the questions, because I actually came up with this particular question, and they used it, and other ones, the brunt they made up, the research company. But one question was, and again, you're asking a 35 and a 40-year-old this, and the question was something along the lines of, whenever I see someone who's wearing a suit and tie, I almost always think they're older than me. So you got a 40-year-old saying if he sees a 25-year-old with a tie, he feels like they're older than him simply because of the tie. Well, and that came back like an overwhelming yes. So what that told me was people actually who maybe are 35, 40, they still think of themselves as in their 20s. Top 40, boom, no problem. And there was another question which was along the lines of, and I don't remember if the word was hip or cooler, but it was which one of these people are the hippest or the coolest, whatever that word was. And it was people like Mick Jagger, Phil Collins, Bono of U2, Bruce Springsteen, and I just threw in CHER in there just for the heck of it, because I thought, okay, this will be the one that they, aren't going to like for sure. This should be 100% nobody wants CHER. And I like CHER, but it's like these other ones in my mind were kind of hip, and CHER didn't fit that at all. Okay, so who do you think is the one that came out, the one that everybody picked? Virtually everyone picked. I mean, it was like a 90-10. Okay, CHER. CHER was the cool person of all those people that I just mentioned. CHER, and you go like, what? But then when you step back a second and you go like, well, actually, you know, CHER is pretty cool. This is early 90s. CHER at that time, she did her own thing. You know, like she didn't take any crap from anybody. It was like, I'm living my life my way, and that's just the way it is. So she actually was really, really cool, but she wasn't rock person cool, you know, because she was the only one with pop music on that list. Everybody else was a rocker. You know, and it's easy to get caught up in that, you know, rock is cool and pop isn't, but, you know, staring at me in the face that, yeah, that's not the way people actually think. Which again only reinforced that the strategy was probably going to work, because people say one thing, but they actually do sort of something else when you try to dig at them. And it was a bunch of other questions like that, which made it really, really clear. If we build a really oldies leaning, slow rotation, in your face, no doubt about it, this is a CHR radio station on FM. When CHR and FM was missing, it should do okay, and it did. But the point I'm going through all of that for you is that we had no idea if it was actually going to work or not. It was a huge gamble that we were willing to take, the owners were willing to take, which God bless them, that was awesome that they decided to, you know, roll the dice on millions of dollars worth of income, that they just thought, you know what, I think this has got a good chance to work, and it did. So that's strategy, two different strategies of radio. I mean, one of the things that I feel kind of grateful for in a way, having to program in Canada versus the US, you know, because I've done both many, many times on both sides of the border. Because of the really weird and odd and restrictive rules in Canada, it forces you to really, you know, if the box is here, you're on another planet trying to think. You are way out of the box in order to, you know, fix your situation. Anyway, that's strategy. Just wanted to really point that out because, you know, we're going to be talking strategy as we go through with these lessons of the steps, what to do when you're the new PD. As always, subscribe if you like the lessons, hit that like button, hit the bell, and that way you get notified. And again, subscribe if you like everything. Until our next lesson, see ya!